This is not another ecom podcast. I'm Ian Kaneshiro. Today, we're diving into a challenge that you might already be familiar with. Getting started as an Amazon seller. In a world of TikTok and Instagram gurus, it's easy to get bogged down with the tips and tricks to get rich fast. And for many of our listeners, you may find yourself already taking really practical approaches to building long-term sustainable businesses and are looking for practical advice and communities to help you along the way. Today, we have Jim Cockrum, a pioneer in the e-commerce world. Jim has been at the forefront of online businesses for over 2 decades, married for 30 years, father of 5. He's not just a family man, but a mentor to many in the e-commerce space. As the founder of the Proven Amazon course, Jim has dedicated his career to helping entrepreneurs and small businesses carve out their niche in the digital space. And his passion is creating an internet-based income systems that thrive. In our conversation today, we'll be tackling some of the pressing issues and questions anyone is looking to answer as they start their Amazon business. And Jim brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the table, and I'm really excited for you, the audience, to hear from all the insights he has to offer. So Jim, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ian. Man, that's quite an introduction. I really appreciate that. And I want to provide maximum value to the listeners today of your excellent podcast. I really appreciate the invitation, sir.
I'm super excited to have you. At Seller Step, we have, been coming to the Proven Conference and talking to, a lot of the people that have worked with you over the years. And, everyone has such great things to say about you and your family and the process. And so I'm super excited to kind of share some of that with the audience today.
Let's dive in, man. I'm here to provide value to the listeners of the show. And I appreciate the intro.
Okay. So yeah, let's jump right in. So can you give us a little bit more of your background and, why do you do what you do? Like, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah. Oh, great question. Great place to start. Yeah. I do interviews frequently myself, and I don't like to spend a whole lot of time on the bio of the guest until I've given people a good reason to care, why they should even care who this person is, right? So I love where you started, like, what gets me out of bed in the morning? I had a conversation with our coaching director. I've had the same coaching director for over 20 years now. I had a conversation with him not too long ago, just observing the e-commerce industry in general. It burns out leaders fast. There's not a lot of leaders that last more than 2, 3, 4 years, and they're off doing something else. They've just something happens inevitably. And we've been doing this 20 plus years, e-commerce coaching and training and doing it ourselves. And we decided that, and this is to answer your question, what gets me out of bed in the morning are those success stories. Because I know over 20 years ago, when I got to sleep in that first day after leaving the corporate world, I sold Microsoft software for a living, and I got to come home. And, long story for another day, but I'm home now. I'm with my kids and I'm with my wife, and I've got flexible schedule. I'm doing life on my own terms. I wanted that for as many other people as possible. I wanted to share the journey with others. And that's how this all started. I was just sharing openly, here's what's working, here's what isn't. Where are all these people that are smarter than me? They can help me figure this out. Let's form a community. And, the rest is history. That's what gets me out of bed, though, to make it a long story very short. The idea of, I know what it feels like to be a dad who gets to be at home. I want that for other dads. I don't know what it feels like to be a mom who gets to be home, because I'm not a mom, but my stuff works for anyone, obviously.
Sure.
But part of my core is bring dads home. If there's other dads out there that say, yeah, I'd rather be there than over there, I want to help make that happen. And that's what we've been doing. That's why we've never gotten burnt out. That's what keeps us fueled.
Totally. I can appreciate how, leaving the corporate world and having the flexibility when you have a family is something to drive you. I was lucky enough where my old man, had a 9 to 5, but was able to, cut what he needed to cut, come and, be on the sidelines of my little league games. Right.
Yeah. I hear you, man, because I always give a shout out to the dads and the parents who are doing what they got to do to pay the bills. I get it, man. You got to work 3 jobs. You're busy. I'm not calling you out, but I'm just so grateful every day that there are options and that with some persistence, you can build something beautiful with those options. And I love helping make that happen, dude. Yeah. So parenting is not a job for the weak, though. It's not a game for sissies, as my dad used to say. So
neither is Amazon selling, apparently.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice transition.
Just like moving into that, there's so many different paths that you can take, if you're trying to break away from, the corporate grind, the 9 to 5. And, there's a lot of businesses to be had out there that might give you similar flexibility. Why did you choose Amazon? And why do you think the people in your community keep flocking towards the Amazon selling space?
Man, I love that question. It really is an excellent question because it cuts right to the heart of why not these other 1,000 things that are going on out there. And to me, I'm a numbers guy. I'm a statistics guy. I think that if you understand where we've been and where we are now, that you can start to project with reasonable certainty where things are heading. And you want to be in the games that have a bright future, right? You don't want to be in the games that are diminishing. You don't want to be in the industries that are shrinking and beating each other up and slowly dying. Now's not the time to be opening up a video game rental store, right? But
sure. I was just thinking Blockbuster.
Exactly. That's a great example. They could have been Netflix, but they aren't. We're all familiar with that story. So pay attention to the big trends. I encourage and I coach people, don't pay attention to what your internal, I want to do this. I feel like I want to do, the saying that grates on me is do things you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I'm like, hey, I love sitting on the bank of a river fishing. I can't feed my family doing that. I love playing basketball. I'm decent. I'm not good enough to pay the bills. So no, where are the big trends heading and how can I contribute value in those arenas? So once we've got our heads on straight on that, okay, I'm going to play where the future's taking us. Amazon is a clear winner. Just pure statistics. This is U.S. government data. E-commerce is still only 15 to 18% of all retail. That's a tiny number. Most people don't believe that number when they first hear it. Look it up. E-commerce is still tiny compared to traditional retail. Okay, of that 15 to 18% of retail that's online, who's dominating? Clearly, Amazon. They're bigger than the next 5, 10 big boys combined. They're almost half the game by themselves. That's where the eyeballs are. That's where the customers are. That's where the opportunity is. And so we come at it from that very logical approach of where's the biggest opportunity inside that arena, what's the lowest hanging fruit? And we start our customers there where you can build a legitimate business. Yes, as I say all the time, anything worth having in life, I don't care if it's relationships, health, friendships, anything, business, it's going to require blood, sweat, tears, work, risk, sacrifice, right? But if you're the kind of person who's willing to put in the time, there is so much opportunity here. And I've got bad news for the people who are looking for the magic shiny button. After 24 years in e-commerce, 20 years full-time, I can tell you it does not exist. The only people getting rich off the big, shiny, get-rich-fast opportunities are the people selling the courses and the content. No one else actually lasts on those opportunities. So we're talking about real businesses here.
Right. Yeah. And I think that, it's really interesting to talk about the e-commerce space. You mentioned that Amazon is, nearly half of the total e-commerce space. And then the crazy thing to think about is, third-party sellers are half of Amazon's business.
Over half, well over half. They emphasized that at the last Amazon Accelerate. You guys are selling more than we are now. Yeah.
And so, and I think that the really interesting way to look at it, it's both kind of a blessing and a burden, is how Amazon is starting to more and more position themselves into the businesses of the third-party sellers, right? Because they are offering services that small businesses would need, right? Marketing services, they're offering getting eyeballs on your products, whether, you're reselling or you have your own private label, they're getting eyeballs on your products. But what do they want in return for that? They want the Amazon fee. They want their 15%, depending on the category. The other things that they're offering is like the FBA, fulfilled by Amazon, which is one of the largest logistics, companies on the planet at the moment, right? But what do they want for it? They want, $3, $4, $7, $8, depending on the size of the package. So it's really interesting to see how Amazon is kind of positioning themselves with leveraging their own, internal business practices to basically sell to third-party sellers. And so the reason why I say it's a blessing and a burden is because you can get that plug and play, $40 a month. You start sending items into FBA. That's the blessing. But the burden is on the tail end is when they come with the bill. And they'll cut you the check, but they also...
Let me take you back in a time machine, let's go back about 14 years or so ago when eBay was the only game in town, really, if you were serious about e-commerce. I went to the eBay live events. Actually, I was nicknamed Mr. eBay for about a decade. Amazon was...
I don't believe it. That's
just books. That's all that Amazon was early on, right? And they had a cool new thing called affiliate marketing, and you could make 3 cents if you referred someone and they bought a book, right? So back in those days, history repeats itself, man. So here's the point I'm making. I remember eBay sellers losing their minds, freaking out. And they had good reason to do so back then. We'd wake up and log into eBay and your account didn't exist. And this is my business. What are you talking? There was no phone number you could call. But on top of that, how crazy it was, eBay would just shut down 3 days at a time. I mean, with tens of thousands of people making a living on the platform. It was Wild West days. But the point I'm making is every time they'd change the fees, every time they'd change some policy, people would lose their minds, myself included. It's this is how I make a living now, guys. I need to make this work. But what I've noticed is after seeing, and without exaggeration, Ian, 24 years is enough time. I estimate about 100 significant changes on the eBay and Amazon marketplaces. Fees, policies, procedures, things you got to go through to make it all work. Every time it's the same. People freak out and lose their minds a little bit, and then they realize something. Ultimately, as long as there are customers shopping on that platform by the tens or hundreds of millions like we've got here,
right,
there's opportunity there. Amazon cannot tackle that monster by itself. Amazon has 150 plus warehouses to fill, and they call themselves the everything store. I didn't make that up. That's what they call themselves. If they're going to be the everything store to every prime customer located all across the U.S. with 150 warehouses, they are ridiculously understaffed, and there is massive opportunity there. The customers are the ones that pay all my fees. At the end of the day, they can do whatever they want. As long as the customers are still there, that's where the opportunity is. Raise your prices, find a better product, pivot, move on. You got to stay flexible. There's 2 rules I always say in e-commerce. 2 rules are you got to stay flexible. Everyone starts saying, oh, the sky is falling. You got to say, okay, where's the opportunity? What does this make possible? Because every time it does make new things possible. And you got to always be learning. So you got to be willing to pivot, always be learning. Now you're good to go. You're an unstoppable machine at that point. Get a good community that you're part of, people that you can do this with. That would be the third wheel. You're good to go, man. I've seen it. I mean, we've coached nearly 10,000 people at this point. The people that last have those things in common.
It's actually really interesting because, with you talking about how the changes that are happening, everybody kind of freaks out and doesn't know what to do.
Yeah. And then they forget all about it 3 months later.
They forget all about it.
The new normal.
But, right now, at the time of this, at the time of the filming of this podcast, the recording of this podcast, there's all these changes that are happening with Amazon fees. It's like the low inventory fee and then the inbound fee to Amazon. From both perspectives, it's about, having distributed inventory in these fulfillment centers all over the country to be able to get to these items to the end user in the most cost-effective, efficient way possible. That's what Amazon's doing. And so what they're doing is that they're passing those fees on to the seller. And what I'm hearing from you is you said, okay, they're passing that fee on to the seller, but ultimately I need to pass that fee on to the customer.
Even if I don't do it intentionally, even if I'm not thinking I thought in my head, it does happen eventually.
You have to.
Because, given the option, are you going to sell products that make you a profit, or are you going to sell products that don't make you a profit? I'm going to sell products that make me a profit. The stuff I can't make any money on, I'm going to stop selling. So if the fees get to the point, or the inconvenience gets to the point where we're no longer able to provide those. We saw this during COVID to a large degree. I lost a few friends at Amazon corporate during COVID because they were telling us, you remember this was a true freak out. I mean, not only did we know if civilization was going to survive, right? We were being told that every price we put on any product was price gouging. Like 80% of our, this wasn't price gouging last month, and now suddenly it is like the same price. Amazon.
Everything's
What's
stranded. You can't sell anything.
Your algorithm's wrong. So now nobody can shop. The shoppers are saying, I can't find what I need. And the sellers are saying, well, that's because we can't send it in at a profit and charge the price we need to charge to pay our teams and pay our bills. So we stopped selling that stuff, right? It was crazy. But the dust settled on that, as it will on this, and the prices will increase. I point back, I think everyone's kind of pointing at the monster of like Amazon's the bad guy raising prices. We're dealing with inflation, unprecedented, just ridiculous amounts of money were printed during COVID. The ripple effect of the price of everything is going up as a result of all this excess cash in the system. It's no surprise, but ultimately the people who pay all these fees are the end shopping customers. So you just got to pivot, raise your price. I am the highest price on multiple ASINs. I've actually given 100 examples lately in our group of just ASINs that I'm selling against way above buy box, way above all the other sellers, because Amazon has 150 warehouses to fill. And if it's a fast moving product, you can charge more than everyone else. So yeah, raise your prices and watch what happens. That's what we've done every single time. And you'll see, the people who stick around are the ones that raise their prices.
Yeah. Look, I think that it's really interesting because, from most Amazon sellers I speak to are also Amazon customers, right? We all buy on Amazon. And so it's really interesting to think about, like, for me, if I need something in a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I have the forethought to do it, maybe I'll go to Walmart, maybe I'll go to eBay.
Yeah, you'll shop around, you'll set up a price alert.
Yeah. Exactly. But if I need something tomorrow, I'm going to Amazon because I have the paid for Prime. I have the Prime account. It'll show up, next day. It's just not a problem. And so it's important to think about, we're talking about inflation that, Amazon is dealing with as well, for sure. But we're also dealing with consumer demand, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wants their things, faster than ever. My folks live in like the LA suburbs, right? And there's these things that I'll go on Amazon for, at 9 a.m. in the morning, and they're like, we'll get it to you by 8 p.m. And in my mind, they've been doing this for a couple of years now, but it's still so fast that I'm like shocked.
Well, there's Prime now. I mean, we get stuff. I've had stuff in 45 minutes. I'm in a suburb of Indianapolis, which isn't a huge city, but we've got our Amazon warehouses, obviously. 45 minutes. How in the world can I get on Amazon and order something and it's on my front porch 45 minutes later?
It's incredible. But
what a machine they've built. But to the point that we're making, and this is the opportunity that I believe is still unpacking, because remember that 15 to 18% of all retail is online. That's going to be 25, 30, 35, 40 in our lifetimes. The game has only started, and Amazon wants to be the everything store, and they want to be able to deliver stuff fast. They're a logistics company at their heart. They want to be able to deliver stuff in 2 hours in all the major cities in the U.S. They can't do that themselves. They can't hire the tens of thousands of people necessary to populate 1 billion ASINs with the inventory that people want. That's where the game is. That's where the opportunity is. And if you dial in and tap in and start to understand that, you'll see this is tip of the iceberg so far. From my perspective, the game has barely started. And Amazon is a bargain for the exposure they give you and the opportunity. You can test on ASINs thanks to tools, like what you guys offer and other great tools out there where you can make good decisions and have an advantage in the marketplace. Man, it's wide open from my perspective. I'm very bullish about e-commerce and specifically Amazon, specifically the reselling opportunities of Amazon.
Yeah, and just like taking us back to the point is that as a consumer, I'll happily pay to have it in 45 minutes.
Of course. You'll pay more. You'll pay $5, $10, $12 more. Yeah, to get it that fast.
That's time value of money for me. If I'm a small business owner and I have an operation to run, using Amazon for my business needs, right? If I need something now, I can either go pay someone to go get it. I can go get it myself, and all of these things cost money, even if it's not, dollars out of my pocket in terms of like heightened fees or whatever that get passed on to me. It costs time. Time costs money. And so the fact that they're getting it there faster is the value that Amazon is bringing to sellers. And we have to remember that consumers will happily pay that premium in order to get it when they need it.
Yeah. And here, just to be real clear, there may be some people who are like, well, I still have to be the best price to win the buy box. That doesn't make sense. I mean, I know customers want it fast, but if I'm not the best price, I'm not going to get sales. That's not how the game works. It's just not. I think too many sellers think of Amazon as one big central warehouse that everybody's price sensitively shopping from. It's not. Like I mentioned earlier, it's 150 plus, maybe closer to 200 warehouses spread out across the country. And a lot of people are only shopping that one warehouse nearest to them that has limited inventory. Now, if they're willing to wait for 2 days, 2 weeks, whatever, now they're shopping at all the warehouses. They're price sensitive and they're willing to wait. If they're not price sensitive and they're in a hurry, which millions of customers are every day, they've got one warehouse that can get it to them there in 2 to 8 hours, right? And so if you're the highest price on an ASIN as a reseller, but you're the only one that has a unit sitting in a warehouse near a customer. So one of the strategies we love teaching people is, send in a few test units of fast moving products at a high price and watch what happens. And there's no tool out there that'll show you those sales happening, by the way. They're not going to show up on any metric tool out there that's better. Like Keepa doesn't show those sales happening. You won't know. The only one that's going to know happening is the seller who's smart enough to price high. We've all seen those ASINs where there's a bunch of sellers and everyone's kind of packed around the buy box, and there's like 3 crazy guys up here, like $12 higher than everyone else. Like, what are they doing? These guys are nuts. No, they're smart. They know that the odds of, if it's a fast-moving ASIN, someone snagging it is pretty high if it's sitting in the right warehouse at the right time. And if you're willing to wait 4 to 6 weeks, maybe a couple months, if it doesn't sell, okay, you drop your price, you get your money back. But on those fast-moving ASINs, that's easy to do. So that's a lot of, there's multiple strategies we use, but I like that one because it really opens up the eyes of a seller to think this isn't a numbers game where I have to be the best price. This is a game of getting my inventory spread out in enough warehouses where it has high odds of someone snagging it at a higher price, because you can outprice all these fees. And we're doing it all day, every day.
What you're talking about kind of reminds me, sometimes we forget that there's this concept of, Amazon sellers are so reliant on FBA that we forget that there's this whole concept of FBM, right? And
of course, yeah.
Fulfill your own thing. And, when we're talking about buy box, which is, my bread and butter, the things that Amazon looks at, definitely is price, right? That's one of the major ones. And it's one of the things that we can easily affect. The other thing that they look at is shipping time. And so what we'll see sometimes is that sellers who are FBM, there's like this game that you can play as well as, being around whatever the buy box price is. You might not get the buy box because you might not be as fast as Amazon Prime, but people will still buy from you because you are competitively priced. Because sometimes your FBM item might be priced below the buy box, but because you're slower shipping time, the FBA gets the buy box. But when you do sell, because of your deal with FedEx or UPS or DHL or whatever, you can ship it out at a cheaper cost than it is FBA, and you're actually making more money because you're not paying long-term storage fees. You're not getting hit with the low inventory fee or whatever, like all these other kind of add-ons that end up happening when you're within the FBA logistics.
We love merchant fulfill. We absolutely love it. And the one tip I would give you is, set the most aggressive possible turnaround time. 1 day. If you got to ship stuff Saturdays, do it, because it's worth it. You're going to win so many more sales, because most people are looking at not just the price, but the amount of time to deliver. Yeah, so we absolutely love merchant fulfill. It's anytime someone says, oh, I don't want to do that, I only do this, that, kind of bifurcation of the options, like am I FBA or am I FBM? Am I retail or am I online? Am I private label or am I wholesale? Am I like anytime you create these imaginary forks in the road unnecessarily, you're limiting yourself. And so, yeah, we love merchant fulfill. If at all possible, do it. If you can't do it yourself, you're logistically not set up to do it, find a prep center that can do it for you. Because especially around Q4, there's stuff that, every year, I've seen this for 12 years. There's items that you can go to your local store, clear the shelf, put 30 units in your cart, and before you check out at the front, you've sold them for 4 times what you're about to pay. You go home and you ship them. Those opportunities are around abundant year round, especially Q4. You're crazy not to do some retail arbitrage. You're crazy not to do some merchant fulfill because it's such low-hanging fruit. There's huge opportunity there. So yeah, absolutely. If you want to keep all your options open. I think that people, they kind of get into a rut and they get into a routine and they say, well, I only sell these items and I only source from this site and this distributor. And, you've locked yourself in. You've got to constantly be, it's kind of like the old advice that I used to hear when I had a job. The best time to be looking for a better job is when you've got a really good one. The best time to be expanding your horizons is when you've got a nice, profitable routine in place. E-commerce is all about multiple income streams. The game will change. You got to always be learning, always be testing, always be failing. That's how you survive for not just, flash in the pan, but decades.
Yeah. It's really interesting because, in this conversation we're bouncing around a lot about all these, they're essentially strategies that you can use in order to, be successful in your e-com business. And it leads me back to the beginning of the conversation, you talking about the ability to, like, having coached 10,000 sellers over the years. And the thing I want to put in perspective for the audience is that, there are, when you're looking for mentorship coaches or people to kind of tell you what to do in the Amazon space, in my experience, I found, kind of two camps, very general. One is like, this is the step-by-step of what you need to do in order to do business. And then the other one is the coaches that kind of understand what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, and will tune their advice and their mentorship for your individual use case. And I think it's really important. I've spoken to, a lot of people that have come through your door as well. And you tend to see the latter because, when you think about sports, for example, every athlete, even on the same team, has one coach, but they all have different roles. They have different capabilities. And a good coach is able to get the most out of each individual player. And that's something that you need to look for when you're kind of looking for people to talk to.
Yeah. It's crazy to me to even say this, but to my knowledge, we've got the longest running e-commerce coaching program in the world. 20 years. Like, try to find someone who's been doing it more than 7 or 8 successfully. 20 years is a long time. And to go to the point you just made, you made a brilliant observation, and it's based on this fact. We recognized very early on, I was very resistant to the whole step-by-step cookie cutter. Everybody goes through the same system. Those just don't work. That's not how business works. It's just not. It's like handing a young married guy, it's like, check these 8 boxes and you'll have a great marriage. It's like, check. I told her I loved her today. Check. I did a household chore. Check. It's like, no, life is messy. Things are going to happen. Disappointments are going to happen. The winds of change are all around you. And you've got unique opportunities as well. So here's our approach. We look at each individual and say, you have unique advantages, circumstances, relationships, geographical advantages the rest of us don't have. Let's look around you and see what unique positioning you have based on your experiences, your background, right? And let's start with that, and let's evaluate, and let's work out from there, rather than here's the cookie cutter script. Now, we do have our training and like, hey, here's how you set this up. Here's how you do the replens model, which is where we start most people out, right? We have that stuff, but with a coach, it's a relationship. It's a long-term helping you, like you just said, like, who are we working with here? How do we stretch them a little bit beyond what they're already doing? The test of time has proven that that's the way to do coaching. There's accountability. There's, to use a biblical word, there's discipleship. There's, which means correcting the bad and encouraging the good. Everyone's journey looks a little different. And that's how we've done it, without diving too much into the weeds, but I'm very passionate about that topic because, we've got 60 coaches at this point. I spend most of my time working with the coaching team leaders. Those are the people that I feel like I have to maintain the strongest relationships with to kind of filter out who we are, what we stand for, how we approach this. But it's very relational at its core. I believe is what you have to have, not cookie cutter. Because we could pick up a workbook and check the boxes. That's not how you build a business. Business is messy. Business is unpredictable. You need relationships.
Right. And, there is something to be said about checklists. There are certain things, like you said, process needs to be done. There's certain things that you have to do, every single day that will help you move forward. But it's kind of literally reading in between those lines is where the success comes from. It's being able to problem solve that way. And I think,
well, let me give you a good example of this. We've got a student who became a coach on our team. He happens to live near me. We actually go to the same church, but he took a fall and hurt his leg pretty bad, messed himself up. Young guy, he's going to recover. He'll be all right. He'll heal up. But he had a lot of struggle doing a lot of the parts of his business. Well, because he's part of a community, because he was a coaching student and he's plugged himself in, he's not one of these guys that just pops into the Facebook group and complains once a month or something about, struggle he's having and then goes away. He's in it. He's helping. He's serving. A lot of people love, trust, and respect this guy. So without even asking, a bunch of people, my warehouse included, stepped up and said, okay, what do you need? We're running your business for you while you recover. And the community came around, right? That's when I say coaching and community, that's what I'm talking about. If you're not intentionally fostering those kind of relationships, so when you're, laid out flat on your back, as a pastor friend of mine says, hey, when you fall down, try to land on your back, because if you can look up, you can get up, right? If you got people around you, you're going to be all right. But if you're trying to do this alone and base it all on a checklist of some kind, and e-commerce is very tempting in that regard. We'd like to think, okay, I've got my computer, I got my shiny keyboard, I'm going to hit the right buttons, I'm going to make some money, and the world will leave me alone. No, you're daydreaming. That's not how it works. It's relationships at its core, because you are going to get leveled at some point. Something's going to smack you down. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. Who do you have around you that cares? What relationships have you built? You've got a coach. You've got some people you're mentoring. You got a community. Those things are vital for long-term survival in any business, but especially in e-commerce, because it's so isolating at times.
Totally. And I think, that's just a great rule of thumb for life in general, though. Like when you have a community, there's something to get out of it when you're down. But I think the even more important part, it's kind of what you alluded to about this person that, took the spill, is that he was, filling the piggy bank of the community, so to speak. He was building those relationships beforehand. And so what that means is not just always looking for ways to take and just pop into Facebook groups and try to gobble up as much information and tips as possible, but it's also, being active in the community in the first place and providing, some kind of service, taking someone by the shoulder and, help lead him down a path towards whatever they need for their business to help get them off the ground. If that's making an introduction to your 3PL, your third-party logistics company, or if that's talking through a problem that you've solved before, that is the point that I think we're trying to get at.
Yeah. Have you heard of the concept of the 3 a.m. list before, by any chance? The 3 a.m. list, my mentor told me it's actually Hebrew. There's so many great Hebrew business principles, man, but this is one of them that I just love. And the 3 a.m. list is the list of names, like write down the actual names of the people that you could call at 3 o'clock in the morning. If they saw that it was you, they would pick up the phone and say, tell me what you need, whatever it is, I'm there. That's your 3 a.m. list, right? Now, some people unfortunately have a very short 3 a.m. list. It's their mom, their old college buddy, and, the person next door, maybe, right? It's a very short list. And your capacity for success in business and in life, which is the same thing, is the length of that list. That's the ceiling. What a cool concept, right? Because it means you've intentionally been fostering, like you were just saying, Ian, you've been intentionally fostering, pouring into others' lives. So at the point where you need something, you've got a whole community, and each of them does a little bit of lifting, and suddenly, it's the Wonderful Life movie, right? Go back and watch it. Powerful movie, great Christmas movie. Just, you've poured into so many people. Of course, when you need something, they're there, they're going to help. And your length of the list, how many names are on there, is the measure of your capacity for success, even in e-commerce, I would argue. And I've seen it again, time and time again. Lone wolves don't survive. People who intentionally, even if you're an introvert, that's just an excuse. You've got to be expanding that 3 a.m. list. The people who will be there, have your back, because you've helped them, you've poured into them, you've shared the journey, open-handed, abundant mindset along the way. And I've certainly been the beneficiary of that many times myself.
I love that. I just learned something new today, and that's for sure going to stick with me for a while. Cool. Jim, as we kind of near the end of this episode, we spoke a bit about a lot of things, about, being flexible, being able to adapt and learn. the importance of, the right mentors, the right communities. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
I think I would end here, and it's with some encouragement for entrepreneurs. We have a vital role to play. I believe we're living during a time of pretty intense cultural decline in a lot of ways, right? You don't feel as safe. Culture is declining in a lot of ways, and there's a lot of solutions that we could dive into. I don't think it's politicians that are going to save us. I think it's people of strong character and entrepreneurs, people building great families. That's my kind of people. And I just want to encourage you, if you're trying to build a business, you are doing so much good. To borrow another Hebrew example that I'll give, there's a quote, I think it's Samuel Johnson is the guy that said it, but rarely or seldom is a man so virtuously engaged than when in pursuit of profit in his own business, something like that. There's very few things you can do that are more virtuous than running a profitable business, because it benefits countless people, most of whom you'll never meet. It's impossible to run a profitable business without benefiting countless other lives. So be encouraged by that, one. And two, we live in the greatest time in world history to launch and grow a business. It's inarguable. As much heat and flack as Amazon gets, they've created more millionaires than any other company in world history. And it's just getting started. So yeah, you can find things to complain about. You got to get creative sometimes to do it. We're so blessed. But the opportunity is real. It's huge. It's expanding. Surround yourself with the right people, with the right mindset, and the sky is truly the limit. There's so much more opportunity out there than we can even imagine at this point. And I say that as a guy who's had a front row seat for about 20 years, that I feel like I'm just getting started.
Well, thank you for that insight, Jim. So there you have it, folks. Jim Cockrum, e-commerce legend, giving us a little bit of insights about, the early days of e-commerce, all the way to the importance of building community, and also just, the want and need to have a profitable business in order to have a fulfilling life and beyond that. So Jim, again, thank you so much for joining us today. And to everyone else out there, thank you for listening to another episode of Not Another E-Com Podcast.